It started on a Tuesday, not the kind that means anything, just one of those days where the world feels a little dimmer for no reason. The cafe near my friend's house was half empty, sunlight falling through the blinds in slow strips. I came there to kill time before heading to the site. Coffee, notes, and maybe an excuse to not go home too early. She was behind the counter. Sophie, my best friend's sister. I'd known her in the background way back. She used to pick him up from school, once lent me a towel after I fell into their pool. But that was years ago. Now she was in her 40s, hair tied up carelessly, sleeves rolled halfway, small smudge of coffee on her thumb. She looked occupied, in that peaceful way people look when they've stopped trying to impress anyone. When she saw me, her face flickered, half recognition, half surprise. "You grew up," she said, not smiling exactly, but something close to it. "Working on it," I said, a beat too late. She remembered my order before I could say it. "Still black." That caught me off guard. "You remember that?" She shrugged. "Some people don't change much." Then she turned away, leaving me with the steam hissing between us and a quiet that didn't feel awkward, just measured. I sat near the window. She moved around behind the counter, not hurried, but deliberate. I found myself tracing the rhythm of her steps, the way she wiped the counter twice even though it was already clean. She had that kind of presence that filled a space without trying. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do with that. At some point, my phone buzzed, a message from my friend. "You left your charger at my place. Come by later if you need it." I typed sure, but didn't send it. I just stared at the blinking cursor until the screen dimmed. When I looked up, she was watching me. Not staring, just seeing. Like she could tell my head was somewhere else entirely. She came over to drop off the mug. "You look tired," she said softly. "Long week." "It's Tuesday." "Yeah," I said, and she almost smiled again. There was a long pause. Neither of us filled it. The coffee cooled between us. The clock ticked behind the counter. And for a moment it felt like something had quietly shifted, like the air had thickened a little, or the day had turned a degree slower. Before leaving, I folded the napkin without thinking, corner to corner, neat triangles. A habit I didn't know I had until I saw her notice it. Her eyes followed the motion, and she looked like she was about to say something, then didn't. Outside, I lingered at the door longer than I should have, pretending to check my phone. The reflection in the glass caught her behind the counter, wiping her hands on a towel, glancing up once toward the window. Just once, but enough to feel it. That night, back at my friend's house, I found her number in the old group chat, a leftover contact from some barbecue years ago. I didn't message her, just looked at it. Then, around midnight, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "Sophie, you forgot your wallet. I locked up, but if you need it tonight, knock." I stared at the message for a long time, the 3 dots flickering, then disappearing. I didn't reply, but I put on my shoes. Her porch light was the only one on in the street, a soft, amber glow that felt too gentle for midnight. I hesitated before knocking, hands deep in my pockets, rehearsing something casual in my head. "Thanks, sorry, won't take long." But when she opened the door, words thinned out. Sophie was in a faded gray sweater, hair loose now, eyes softer than they'd been at the cafe. The sound of a TV murmured faintly from inside, something she'd probably forgotten to turn off. "You came," she said. "You said I forgot my wallet." She nodded, but her tone was quiet, almost amused. "You could have waited till morning." "Couldn't sleep." That hung there for a second. Not a confession, but close. She handed me the wallet, but didn't step back. "Tea." I almost said no, but she'd already turned toward the kitchen, the soft hum of the kettle breaking the silence between us. The place looked lived in. Papers on the counter, books stacked unevenly, a candle burned halfway down. There was a framed photo of her and my friend from years ago. He must have been in high school. Her hand rested on his shoulder in that picture, protective, proud. It made something in my chest twist. She noticed me looking. "He barely visits anymore," she said, rinsing a mug. "Always too busy. That's what growing up does. It pulls people away." "You still text him?" "Sometimes. He forgets to answer. She smiled faintly. You're better at replying. I laughed softly. Only when it matters. For a while, we didn't talk. The kettle clicked off. She poured 2 cups, slid one toward me, and sat across the table, not far, but not close either. The steam between us curled upward like something trying to find its shape. She tapped her finger against the mug. You know, when you were younger, you used to follow him everywhere. You were quiet, polite, painfully shy. I still am. No, she said. You just hide it better now. That made me look at her. Really look. There was no teasing in her voice, just observation. Like she'd been noticing things quietly all along. I wanted to ask her something. Why she was alone, if she ever missed anyone, if she ever thought about how strange it was that I was sitting in her kitchen at midnight. But instead, I said, you seem different lately. Happier, maybe. She looked down, smiled into her tea. Divorce does that, sometimes. You start hearing yourself again. That word, divorce, landed softly, like she'd said it enough times to dull the edge. Still, it left a trace in the air. I nodded, pretending to understand more than I did. When I got up to leave, she walked me to the door. I thanked her, and she brushed something from my sleeve. A bit of lint, nothing more. But the touch stayed longer than it should have. I'll see you around, she said, almost whispering. Yeah, I said. Probably. Outside, the street was silent. I could still feel the warmth of her fingers on my arm, small and impossible to ignore. Later, lying awake, I kept replaying the sound of her saying, "You came." I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. After that night, things changed, not in any obvious way, but in the rhythm of things. I started dropping by the cafe more often. Sometimes in the morning before class, sometimes just before closing. She didn't say anything about it, but her eyes did that small, knowing thing, like she'd been waiting, but would never admit it. There was comfort in the routine. She'd hand me my coffee without asking, and I'd take the seat near the window, pretending to read. We spoke about ordinary things, weather, her cat that ignored her, the neighborhood dog that barked at nothing. But sometimes, silence would slip in, too full to ignore. Like that Thursday. Rain pressing against the windows, both of us alone in the shop near closing. She was wiping down the counter, sleeves rolled up, humming something I couldn't place. I was supposed to leave an hour ago. You should head out before it gets worse, she said, glancing at the rain. I don't mind waiting, I said. It's warm here. She looked at me then, properly, like she was trying to read what I meant. I felt it. The pause that followed was long enough to make me look away. She turned back to the counter. You know, your friend stopped by earlier. Oh, he asked if I'd seen you. I said not much. She hesitated, then added, you might want to be careful. He's not as oblivious as he looks. That pulled me back to myself, the reminder of who she was, who I was supposed to be. My best friend's sister. Older. Off limits, if we were being honest. I tried to make light of it. Guess I'll have to spread my caffeine addiction around. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Maybe that's best. Something tightened in the air. We both knew she didn't mean the coffee. The clock ticked. Rain softened outside. I stood, hesitating, halfway to the door, halfway wanting her to stop me. Instead, she said quietly, you remind me of him sometimes. Your friend. I turned. How so? She thought about it. You both used to look at me like I had all the answers. But I never did. Her voice thinned near the end. I wanted to close the space between us, to tell her she didn't have to have answers, that I wasn't looking for them. But I stayed still. She leaned against the counter, tired suddenly. You should go before the rain stops. That didn't make sense, but it did. A way of saying, don't make me the one to end this. I nodded, started toward the door. She followed, not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel the warmth of her hand when she reached to unlock it. For a moment, neither of us moved. My hand brushed hers, by accident, maybe not. She froze. So did I? The sound of rain filled the silence. She looked up at me, eyes soft but unreadable. Good night, she said. It could have been a whisper. It could have been something else entirely. I left before I found out. Outside, I stood under the awning, heart loud in my chest. Through the glass, she was still there, fingers resting on the lock, not turning it yet. She didn't wave, but she didn't move away either. The days got colder. Leaves along her street turned brittle, the kind that crumble under shoes. I started noticing little things about her again. How she'd hold her cup with both hands even when it wasn't cold, or how she always looked out the window before unlocking the cafe door in the morning, like she was bracing herself for the day. I stopped pretending I came for the coffee. That evening, I found her outside the cafe after closing. She was sitting on the curb, coat wrapped around her, hair tucked behind her ear. The sign on the door read closed, but she hadn't gone home yet. The streetlight above her buzzed faintly, flickering every few seconds. "You're late," she said, not looking at me. "Didn't know I was expected. You always come around this time." She smiled, a tired, knowing one. I sat beside her, careful not to let our shoulders touch. The air smelled like rain again. For a while, we didn't talk, just watched the street. A couple walked by, laughing, brushing shoulders. Sophie's gaze followed them for a second too long. "You ever miss it?" I asked quietly. "What?" "Being with someone. The simple kind of being with." Her breath came out slow. "You think it's simple?" "Used to." She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the ground, where a leaf had fallen near her shoe. She nudged it with her toe until it tore. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured. "Why not?" "Because I'll start to believe you mean them." That silenced me. I wanted to tell her I did mean them, that I thought about her more than was reasonable, that every day she felt closer and further all at once. But she was already looking at me, and something in her eyes warned me to stop. So I didn't speak. A car passed, washing us in light for a second, then gone. The moment stretched, thin as glass. She exhaled, voice quieter now. "Your friend came by again. Asked if I ever see you." "What did you say?" "That you drop in sometimes." "That's all." Her tone carried something else, a question hidden underneath, maybe even regret. I nodded. "He wouldn't understand." "Neither do I," she said. Then, softer, "I keep telling myself you'll stop coming. But you don't." Her words hurt in a strange way, like she was asking me to leave and hoping I wouldn't. "I can't," I said, "if that's what you want." She looked up finally. "Don't." The quiet between us thickened, the kind that makes your pulse too loud. She reached out suddenly, not to touch, just to rest her hand near mine on the curb, close enough that warmth bled between the spaces. Neither of us moved. "I'm not who you think I am," she said, almost to herself. "Then tell me who you are." She smiled faintly, eyes shining in the weak light. "Someone who should have locked the door sooner." Her words sat there, sharp, honest, trembling. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. And in that silence, the distance between our hands felt like the only thing holding the world together. The next morning, she wasn't at the cafe. At first, I told myself it was nothing, a late start, a delivery, maybe a day off. But by the third day, when someone else stood behind the counter, I knew it wasn't that simple. The new barista smiled politely, handed me my coffee, and said Sophie was taking some time. Those words, some time, felt too light for what they carried. I still went every morning. Habit, I told myself. But really, I was looking for her coat on the rack, her voice over the milk frother, her eyes catching mine in that quiet way that made everything else slow down. Nothing. A week passed before I saw her again, outside the grocery store, in the early evening light. She looked smaller somehow, tired, a phone pressed to her ear. I almost didn't recognize her. I was halfway across the parking lot when she noticed me. She ended her call quickly, slipping the phone into her bag. "Hey," she said, voice polite. "Hey." I waited for something, a joke, a smile. "You've been avoiding me," but none came. "How have you been?" she asked, the question sounding like something rehearsed. "Fine. You disappeared." She hesitated. "Had to. My son came home." I blinked. "You have a son?" She nodded. "College kid. Spent the summer with his dad." Decided to stay a few weeks before heading back. That explained the distance, but it didn't ease it. Could have told me, I said. Could I? She asked, meeting my eyes for the first time. There was something heavy there, guilt, maybe, or fear. We were starting to blur lines. I thought it'd help if I didn't make it worse. So that's it. She sighed. You're young, and he's your friend. I should have known better. Her words didn't sting the way I thought they would. They just landed flat, like she'd already said them to herself a dozen times. We stood there for a moment, people passing by with carts, the world carrying on like nothing had paused. She reached for my arm lightly, a brief, careful touch, then pulled back. Take care, okay? And then she walked away. That night, I opened her message thread, our short history of quiet check-ins and fragments of almost conversations. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed I miss you. Deleted it. Typed coffee tomorrow. Deleted that too. The cursor blinked for a long time, patient and cruel. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It had been 3 weeks. Long enough for her number to slip down my messages list, buried under delivery alerts and group texts I didn't care to read. I told myself I was fine. I went to class. I sketched. I even stopped by the cafe once. The new girl still didn't know how to steam milk properly. But every time I walked past Sophie's street, something in me slowed down, like muscle memory. Like my body remembered her even if my mind tried not to. Then, one night, it rained again. The kind of steady, unhurried rain that made the air smell like clean slate. I was walking home when I saw the faint glow in her window, that same amber light from before. Before I could think better of it, I found myself at her porch. I didn't plan to knock. I just wanted to see if I still could. The door opened before I even touched it. She stood there, barefoot, wearing a sweater too big for her. Like she'd been waiting, or expecting a ghost. Hi, I said. Hi, she echoed, voice soft. Then, after a pause, you're soaked. She stepped aside, and I walked in. Her house looked different, warmer somehow. A half-finished puzzle on the table, a blanket on the couch. She poured tea without asking, the way she used to. We sat across from each other again, steam curling between us. I shouldn't be here, I said finally. I know. Then why aren't you telling me to leave? She smiled, barely. Because I missed having someone to talk to. That was it. No grand confession, no apology. Just truth, laid plain and human. She looked tired, but peaceful. The kind of tired that comes after you stop fighting the same thought over and over. How's your son? I asked. Back at school. He left yesterday. She stared into her cup. It's quiet again. I didn't want to make things harder for you, I said. You didn't. She looked up. You just made me remember what it felt like to be noticed. There it was. The thing between us, finally named, even if only in fragments. I wanted to reach for her hand, but I didn't. Instead, I said, it wasn't just you. Her breath caught. Not dramatic, just real. Then she laughed quietly, shaking her head. We're ridiculous. Probably, I said. We sat there, two people who'd spent weeks pretending to forget something neither of us had the strength to erase. She reached across the table, fingers grazing mine. Light as breath, deliberate as a goodbye. Thank you, she said. For what? For not making me feel like a mistake. The clock ticked. The rain eased. I nodded, voice low. You never were. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The silence didn't ache anymore. It just was. When I finally stood to leave, she followed me to the door again. No long looks this time, no hesitation. Just a quiet, steady calm. At the threshold, I turned back. So we're okay? She smiled. A small, tired, true smile. Yeah, she said. We're okay. And somehow, that felt like enough. Spring came slow that year. The cafe reopened under a new name. Same smell of roasted beans, same chipped counter. Sophie kept her job, though she worked fewer hours now. She said it was to have mornings to herself, though I sometimes caught her sitting on the bench outside at 8:47 a.m., cup of black coffee warming her hands, eyes tracing the world like she was quietly choosing what to keep. I still stopped by sometimes. Not every day, just often enough that the rhythm felt familiar, like breathing. We'd talk a little, not about us, not anymore. About her garden that wouldn't grow, my final project, her son visiting in the summer. Ordinary things. That was the difference now. Ordinary didn't feel empty anymore. One morning, she slid a cup across the counter before I'd said a word. "Still black?" she asked, a hint of teasing in her tone. I smiled. "Still remembering?" She shrugged, eyes glinting. Some people don't change much. The same words she'd said months ago, but now they felt softer, lived in. Outside, the street was busy, early lights spilling through the window. I watched her move around the cafe, sleeves rolled up, humming under her breath again. The sound fit the place. It fit her. When she came over to wipe the table near mine, she paused for a second. "You still at your friend's place?" "For now," I said. "He's moving out soon. I'll find something close by." She nodded, maybe too quickly. Close by's good. It wasn't a confession. It didn't need to be. Later that week, we walked home together. Just like before, side by side. A little space between us, but never too much. The sky was dimming, the smell of rain hanging in the air again. At her gate, she stopped, turning toward me. "You ever think about how strange timing is?" "Every day," I said. She smiled faintly, fingers brushing the gate latch. "We met at the wrong time, but maybe we learned at the right one." That stayed with me. The way she said learned instead of loved. It felt truer somehow. I wanted to say something back, something equal, but all that came out was, "Tea tomorrow?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Tomorrow," she said. And that was it. No kiss, no grand gesture. Just a promise that sounded like a shared breath. Weeks later, I caught her reflection in the cafe window as I passed by, hair loose, laughing with a customer. She didn't see me, and I didn't go in. But I smiled anyway. Because sometimes love doesn't need to be rewritten. It just needs to be lived quietly, in the same spaces, in the same light. I still drink my coffee black. She still folds her napkin when she thinks no one's watching. And every morning at 8:47, the world feels like it's waiting, not for something to start, but for something to continue.